Hunt to survive. Chastu Neanderthal hunters, how they master the hunt in the most brutal era. Hunt to survive. In a world of ice and monsters, the Neanderthals fought every day just to stay alive. Long before us, when the earth was frozen and wild beasts ruled the land, the Neanderthals walked the cold plains. They had no cities, no safety, only their strength and their will to live. They learned to hunt giant beasts, to work together, to turn the land itself into a weapon. This is their story, how they mastered the hunt in the most brutal era the world has ever known. The need to hunt Neanderthals lived in a world that was rarely kind. Cold winters, short summers, and forests that could hide dangers meant that plants alone could not feed them. Meat was essential. From bison to horses, mammoths to red deer, every animal they hunted supplied more than just food. It supplied warmth, tools, and the strength to survive another day. Hunting wasn't just about filling the stomach, it was about mastering the environment, understanding prey, and coordinating with fellow hunters to turn danger into sustenance. The tools of survival. Without sophisticated bows or guns, Neanderthals had to rely on what they could craft and carry. Their primary weapon was the spear, but these were far from simple sticks. Some were sharpened wood, carefully hardened over fire, while others were tipped with stone, flaked to a razor point capable of piercing thick hides. Spears were extensions of their own strength, designed for thrusting, or in some cases, throwing, combining raw power with precision. Every strike counted, and the careful crafting of these tools meant the difference between a successful hunt and empty hands. But spears were only part of the story. Neanderthals carried rocks, cobbles, and pieces of quartzite not merely for smashing bones, but for producing tools on the spot. At kill sites, evidence shows that all stages of tool production occurred in the field, highlighting flexibility and efficiency. Knives, poleaxes, and scrapers allowed them to butcher carcasses, skin animals, and process meat and hides for clothing. Every object had a purpose, and their hands displayed remarkable dexterity in turning raw materials into precise instruments of survival. Neanderthal toolkits evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, reflecting intelligence, planning, and innovation. Mousterian tools, produced widely across Europe from around 300,000 years ago, were highly sophisticated. Using the Levallois flaking technique, Neanderthals first prepared a stone core by carefully striking away chips, forming a tortoise-like shape. From this prepared core, they struck large, razor-edged flakes that became knives, scrapers, or spear points. Each tool existed first in the mind of the maker, demanding foresight, skill, and knowledge of materials. Flint became a preferred material because of its predictable fracture and extremely sharp edges, while bone could be used for softer percussion to control the shape of flakes. These tools were versatile, used for hunting, butchery, and survival tasks, making Neanderthals far more than simple predators. Later, Chattel-Perronian tools marked a transition toward Upper Paleolithic technologies. These implements show even greater sophistication and variety, including shell and bone ornaments, and even musical instruments like bone flutes. While there has been debate about whether Neanderthals invented these or adapted them from interactions with modern humans, evidence suggests they mastered them through cultural exchange. Chattel-Perronian tools were used not only for hunting, but also for crafting, ornamentation, and symbolic behaviors, demonstrating that Neanderthals combined survival with ingenuity and culture. Neanderthals also integrated tools with fire and construction. They controlled fire for cooking, warmth, and hardening wood, while evidence from Ukraine shows they built shelters from mammoth skulls, jaws, tusks, and leg bones. These structures contained dozens of hearths, suggesting coordinated effort and large, complex social groups. Caring for the injured, the elderly, and even burying the dead, sometimes with animal remains, tools, or flowers, points to an intricate social and survival network in which tools, hunting, and human relationships were deeply connected. Techniques of the hunt. The true genius of Neanderthals lay not only in their tools, but in how they used them. They did not chase prey across miles like wolves. Instead, they turned the landscape itself into a weapon. Valleys, marshes, hills, cliffs, ditches, depressions, and natural blind spots became traps. At Laborde, France, hunters targeted cow and calf herds of aurochs, guiding them into collapsed caves or low oppressions by approaching at specific angles, steering the leaders and funneling the herd. Multiple hunters coordinated their efforts, sometimes out of sight of each other, to control the animals' movements. Neanderthals exploited every curve and corner of the terrain. At Moron, France, bison were cornered against cliffs and marshes. while at Taubach, Germany, rhinoceroses were ambushed at warm springs using natural cover. These strategies show that they relied on patience and planning rather than raw speed, which they could not match against lions or wolves. Hunters may have used simple blinds or natural cover to conceal themselves, lying in wait for hours until the perfect moment. But that's not all. Close-range hunting was the most common technique. Spears were thrust into the animals in coordinated attacks, with multiple hunters striking simultaneously. Some evidence suggests they may have occasionally thrown their weapons, but thrusting was the hallmark of their deadly skill. This required immense strength, precision, and knowledge of anatomy to hit vital spots. Every strike was intentional, every movement calculated, and repeated thrusting could injure the hunter yet maximize efficiency. Remains from various sites reveal that Neanderthals swung between selective and unselective strategies. At times, they targeted specific species or individuals, and at other times, they struck any catchable prey before choosing the best carcasses to butcher and consume. Hunting large animals required whole teams of hunters working in close cooperation. Slaughtering a single straight-tusked elephant, for example, might involve 25 individuals working over 3 to 5 days to process and prepare the meat. The scale of their hunts also suggests an awareness of future needs. Neanderthals collected more meat than they could immediately consume, indicating that they may have prepared and preserved food for later. Their approach to hunting was sophisticated, combining tools, terrain, teamwork, and knowledge of animal behavior into a system that allowed them to survive and thrive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. Mastering the hunt through experience. How did they learn? Trial, error, and observation. Young Neanderthals watched elders hunt, mimicked their movements, and slowly built muscle memory and intuition. They learned animal behaviors, how a herd moves when one member panics, which paths animals follow during seasonal migrations, where predators might ambush them, and how to avoid being caught themselves. Some hunts were methodical, slow, and patient, requiring long hours of observation. Others relied on sudden bursts of speed and power, surprising the prey. Over generations, these strategies evolved into a highly efficient system. Environmental influence on hunting. Even the harsh Ice Age environment shaped every aspect of Neanderthal hunting. Snow and ice could obscure tracks, but also funnel prey into predictable routes. Forests offered concealment but limited visibility. Rivers and marshes could slow animals or force them into open areas. Even the changing seasons influenced their strategy. Summer might allow more mobility, while winter required careful rationing of food and precise strikes. The environment was both enemy and ally. To master hunting, Neanderthals had to master their surroundings. They read the land like a map, understood the weather, and anticipated animal movements. Their survival depended on the perfect blend of tool, tactic, and terrain. Social structure and the hunt.
We attack at dawn. Yes!
Well, hunting was not a solo endeavor. Close-range kills demanded cooperation. Entire groups worked together, each individual understanding a role: driver, attacker, watcher. The hunt strengthened social bonds. Success brought food, but also trust, respect, and protection. Injuries were common, so support networks mattered. Hunters who risked themselves for the group could rely on others to care for them, ensuring survival beyond a single encounter. But beyond teamwork lay something deeper, a strategy born from experience and instinct. Each prey demanded different tactics, different tools, and an intimate knowledge of the landscape. From colossal mammoths to cunning leopards, Neanderthals orchestrated the impossible. Let us walk through the epic saga of their hunt, step by step. 1. Mammoths. You see, back in the Ice Age, there were no guns, no armor, no safety nets, just raw courage and sharpened stone. The Neanderthals were built different, hunters who studied giants that walked the frozen plains. They tracked mammoths for days, moving silently through snow and fog, watching the herds, learning every step, every habit. At night, they gathered around the fire, sparks flying as they worked. Their hands shaped Levallois blades from flint, sharp enough to slice through hide and tendon. Wooden spears were hardened in flame, tips blackened and strong. Every weapon had a purpose. Every plan was life or death. When the moment came, the hunters turned the land itself into a trap. They drove a massive mammoth toward soft mud, where its weight sank deep. The air filled with shouts and the thunder of hooves. Spears flew one after another, striking muscle and hide. The beast roared, a sound that shook the valley, but they didn't back down. Blow by blow, they brought the mountain of fur and bone to its knees. When silence finally fell, the real work began. Under cold light and flickering flame, they carved for days. Meat was smoked and dried for food. Bones became tools and spear points. Hides were scraped and stitched into shelter. Fat was melted into firelight. Nothing was wasted. In that frozen world, survival didn't belong to the strongest. It belonged to those who could think, plan, and endure. But the hunt never ended with the mammoth, where one giant fell. Another threat waited in the dark. 2. Cave lions. In the frozen silence of an Ice Age morning, mist swirled around the entrance of a cave. Inside, the tribe stirred. Fire crackled low, casting shadows on the walls. Shadows of warriors, of lions, of stories etched in ochre and ash. Today, one of those shadows would come to life. They were not like us, and yet they were. Neanderthals, thick-browed, iron-willed, wrapped in furs, their eyes sharp with hunger and purpose. To live in their world was not to exist. It was to endure, to fight, to kill or be forgotten, and nothing tested their will more than the cave lion, a beast the size of a small horse, muscles coiled beneath golden fur, eyes that glowed in the dark. This was not prey, it was a rival. It stalked the same forests, hunted the same herds, and worse, it watched the tribe, always from a distance, until one day it came too close. The lion had taken a child, not killed, taken, dragged into the trees. Gone. Grief in this time was brief. There was no room for sorrow, only revenge, only the hunt. The elders whispered the old plans, the maps of claw marks and broken twigs. They had done this before, once, many winters ago, but few survived that memory. Still, 3 warriors were chosen, not because they were fearless, but because they knew fear and walked toward it. At dawn, they moved, silent barefoot over snow. One carried fire in a hollowed-out stone, another obsidian blades wrapped in sinew. The third, the bait, carried nothing but a sharpened branch and the scars of a brother lost. They tracked the beast for hours, past frozen creeks into the thickets where birds fell silent, and then they saw it, alone, feeding, its fur matted with blood. Not human blood, yet. The trap was simple. One man would appear, not run, just appear. The lion, territorial and hungry, would charge. It always charged, the others would strike from the sides. But there is no plan when a lion runs. It moved like thunder. The baitman screamed, not in fear, but in fury, as he drove his branch upward into flesh. The lion roared, twisted, too fast, too strong. It clawed him across the chest and spun toward the trees. But the others were already there. One spear pierced its side, another its throat. The beast thrashed, its death echoing through the valley. And then, silence. Snow-soaked red breath hung in the air. The lion lay still. They had done it. They had killed a god. That night, the tribe danced. The lion's body was laid at the cave's edge, not as food, but as proof. Its pelt became a cloak for the baitman, who now walked with a limp, but stood taller than ever. Its skull was placed where all could see, above the cave's mouth, a warning to beasts. A story for children. A memory etched into stone. You see, the Neanderthals didn't just survive. They told stories with blood and fire and bone. Stories we now dig from the earth, trying to understand how they lived, and how much of them still lives in us. Yet for every lion that fell, another shadow roamed the plains, one with longer fangs and an even deadlier bite. 3. Saber-Toothed Cats. The wind was cold and sharp, cutting through the trees. Snow fell quietly, covering the ground in white. In the middle of the forest, the hunters followed the tracks. Big, heavy, and fresh. They knew what left them. The saber-toothed cat was close. It was a killer from another age, huge and strong, with long teeth like knives and eyes that glowed in the dark. One hit from those jaws could break a bone. But the Neanderthals didn't run. They were hungry, and they knew this hunt could feed the tribe for weeks. Before sunrise, they made a plan. Some hid behind trees, holding spears with sharp stone tips. Others crept around to block the cat's path. They used fire and noise to draw it out. The air was still, their hearts beating hard. Then came the growl, deep, close, angry. The cat leapt from the shadows, fast as lightning spears flew. One hit its shoulder, another struck its side. The beast roared and clawed at the snow, but the hunters didn't stop. They pushed forward, shouting, striking again and again, until the great cat fell still. That night, the tribe sat by the fire. They cooked its meat, shaped its bones into tools, and hung its teeth on cords around their necks. Not as decoration, but as proof they had faced the deadliest hunter of the Ice Age, and they survived. But the Ice Age was full of surprises, and danger often came not from size, but from stealth itself. 4. Leopards. Snow covered the ground like a white blanket, broken only by a line of fresh paw prints. The hunters stopped. They crouched low, studying the marks. The spaces were wide, the steps light. A leopard. It was close, maybe watching from the trees. This was no giant like the mammoth, but it was faster, smarter, and deadly. It could climb, hide, and strike before anyone saw it coming. Still, the Neanderthals didn't back away. They had hunted beasts far worse. They just needed a plan. They built their trap using the forest itself. Thick branches for walls, fallen logs to block escape. One hunter stepped into the open, holding a burning stick, pretending to be alone. The rest waited behind, spears ready. A low growl came from the shadows. Then a blur of fur and teeth burst from the dark. Spears flew. One struck its chest, another its neck. The cat fell, thrashing, then went still. But stealth wasn't their last challenge. In the frozen wilds, new hunters waited, clever, fast, and hungry. 5. Wolves. The night was cold and quiet, broken only by distant howls. Out on the snow, the wolves were moving, dark shapes slipping through the frost, eyes glowing in the moonlight. The hunters heard them and understood. The wolves were chasing the same prey, living by the same hunger. Sometimes they were enemies, fighting over a fresh kill. The wolves struck first, fast and fearless, but the Neanderthals were clever. They built fires, raised their spears, and faced the pack head-on. Sparks flew as wood met fang, shadows twisting in the firelight until the noise faded into stillness. But even after outsmarting the wolves, the hunt was far from over. The Neanderthals would now face the king of the caves. 6. Cave bear. The cave bear was one of the last true giants of the Ice Age, huge, wild, and feared by all. Its fur was thick as armor, its claws longer than a man's hand. But the Neanderthals were not afraid. Hunger made them brave. When spring came and the snow began to melt, they searched the cliffs for caves inside. The bears still slept, weak from months without food. The hunters prepared carefully, long spears with flint tips, stone hammers for breaking bone, torches made from birch bark, and fat smoke and fire were their weapons now. They built small fires at the mouth of the cave, feeding them until the heat and smoke drove the bear out into the open. The moment it stumbled into the light, they struck. Spears flew, shouts echoed off the rock walls. The ground shook as the giant fell, thrashing until the end. By morning, the cave no longer belonged to the bear. It belonged to those who had learned to turn fear into survival, the Neanderthals. Final thoughts. So in every site, the story is clear. Neanderthals were skilled, intentional hunters. Yet their strategies shifted from place to place, shaped by the land, the prey, and the teamwork that defined their survival. The Neanderthals faced beasts bigger than trucks, and nights colder than ice, yet they survived through skill, teamwork, and courage. But what about you? If you were there, could you hunt like them? Or would the Ice Age hunt you? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories from the dawn of humanity.